Hey friends, it's Kevin here. We have a project to do today on my airplane. So unfortunately, I showed up the other day with my wife. We were going to fly down to Harris Ranch and get some nice tri-tip sandwiches. Got to the airplane, doing the pre-flight, and found this tire flat. Well, in a lot of ways, that was actually a good thing, a real blessing that the tire was flat. Because let me show you something. I have Katie filming today and my neurotic dog, Zeus. Come here, Zeus. Come. He says hi. All right. Come over here and take a look at the wheel. So, now the problem with wheel pants is, and if you come on over here, you can look at, it looks like there's a lot of tread. It looks like there's a lot of tread there, that the tire is still good. But the problem is, when I was inspecting it, because it was flat, I found that it has a bad spot right there where cords are actually coming through. Now, I don't believe that that was what caused it to go flat at all, but if it wouldn't have been flat and I would have been seeing some tread here, I wouldn't have realized that the tire was bad. The tire could have easily have come, this is going nuts over there. The tire could have easily come apart on takeoff or landing, destroying the wheel pants, who knows what could happen. So I'm actually kind of glad that the tire was flat, that I noticed that. So project for today is to get the tire off and put a new tire on. So let's get to work. All right, so I got the wheel pants off. Now let me give you the best piece of advice you're probably ever going to get as far as being a general aircraft mechanic, and that is Black Widows love wheels. I don't know what it is about that. I'm absolutely shocked, probably because this plane came from Minnesota and I haven't picked up any Black Widows yet, but there are no spiders in here, which is highly unusual. But normally, put this down, damage it, normally you have Black Widows in here somewhere. So I'm going to keep an eye out, but I haven't seen any Black Widow nests or webs. And you know, you can always tell because they're real sticky. But take a look at this tire now that I got it off. How bad that is. So how does something like that happen, you might ask? Well, I'm going to be honest and tell you that it happens most often. It's pilot error. So now all I have to do is figure out who the pilot of this aircraft is and blame him, which is obviously me. And I'm here at Lodi Airport. It's kind of a shorter runway, and I know one day I tried to make the first turn off. I had to get on the brakes a little bit hard. Maybe I did that, or maybe I didn't. But I'm going to take responsibility and say it's my fault, my plane. But you can actually take a look at the tire. You can see how in this area it's getting a little bit bald. You can see my dog. And but you can see how the tread is good up here still. So you can see why, if you're looking at this part of the tire, you would think that you still have some life left on it. But clearly I don't because of that. So let's get the tire off and get it going. So back to work. All right, I was just getting ready to take the tire off, but I want to show you something I just noticed. Take a look at these bolts. Notice anything missing? Those are supposed to be safety wire. They have safety wire holes right through there. So we got to make sure we get that safety wired. Bad. That's not my fault. This is the first time I've had this off. So, all right, back to work. All right, tire's off. And what I have here is a tire core tool. It's got multiple pieces on it. So one side allows me to pull the core out. Now, when you're working on especially much larger tires that hold a lot more pressure, and even to a good extent on these small ones, it's actually a good idea to pull the core out before you take the axle nut off. And the reason why is because that axle nut is also holding the two halves of the wheel together. And if for some reason the bolts holding these two halves were bad, it would actually blow the tire wheel halves apart. So on larger wheels, you want to pull the stem out before you take it off the aircraft. Well, I kind of knew I had a flat going on here, so I wasn't real worried about it. Now, the other sides to this little tool right here, it has a thread chaser, so I can chase the threads going this way. On the outside, it's got another one, so I can get it started and chase them on the inside. So that allows me to clean up and kind of save what's going on here if I needed to do anything like that. So what I'm going to do now is get this all cleaned up. And then I want to take the bearings out, and I'm going to take the wheel off, take them apart. I'm going to take the bearings. I'm going to inspect the whole thing, because when you have it apart like this, especially a plane I don't know very well yet, I want to check those bearings and make sure that they've been properly taken care of, maintained, and greased. So I will probably have Emilio, my son, help me on this one, but back to work. All right, so you saw me prying on the tire with these. These are not screwdrivers. Please don't use screwdrivers. They're too sharp. These are actually tire tools. They have blunt edges. These go all the way back to my days of changing tires on ATVs, but they work great on these aircraft wheels just as well. It's got a tube, so it doesn't have a bead on it there that's seated like a car. So you don't have to pry and beat and force it off. Really just a little bit of pressure downwards is going to loosen up the tire. Once the tire's loose, should be able to pull the wheel half right out of there. And oof, that's ugly and dirty. It needs to be cleaned. So we're going to clean over here in my environmentally friendly water-based solvents. So back to it. Okay, I've got Emilio over there cleaning the wheel halves and the bearings and races and all that. While he's doing that, it gives me opportunity to take a look at my brake system. So here I've got the brake disc that came off, and it's not horribly dirty and greasy, so it doesn't bother me to use it right now. But what I'm going to do, I have to check the thickness of this according to the maintenance manual. So let me just talk about maintenance manuals real quick. It's important that you have the current and proper maintenance manual for the aircraft you're working on whenever you're working on an aircraft, right? I think everybody knows that, but here's something interesting. So what does current mean? Well, when I worked for a repair station, we had it written in our OpSpecs manual, our repair station manual, that the current manual was whatever, I'm working on Cessna here, whatever Cessna said is the latest and greatest manual for a 182, that's the one we had to use with all current revisions. But somebody once said to me, or challenged me, that the current manual for this particular airplane, the 1977 Cessna 182, was the manual that it came with when it rolled off the factory floor, and you never have to update it after that. Well, that seems inappropriate to me coming from the repair station world, but I actually did a lot of research and found out that that person was 100% accurate. That the current manual for this aircraft, it's legal for me to use the aircraft that this came with as it rolled off the factory floor back in 1977 with no revisions. That is legal. I've got some FAA documents that I've looked up, and that's accurate. Now, the question then goes to you. Do you want to use that manual, or do you want to use the most current revisions? Well, of course, I think that we would all agree that we want to use the most current revision and want to be the best up-to-date we can, because that's what aircraft mechanics do. So, having said that, I've got my electronic manual up here. I need to measure the minimum and maximum thickness. Well, I don't think it's going to go over the maximum. I'm not really worried about that, but it's a good way to tell if I have the right or wrong one. Last plane I had, it was over the maximum, and that clued me into the fact that it had the wrong brakes on it. So this one, the minimum is 0.190. Now, I have to measure that. I'm going to use a micrometer. And of course, all micrometers used for return to service must be calibrated. And to do that, you can use a standard. This is a 0 to 1 micrometer. So I close it, make sure the zeros line up, and then I would open it, use a standard, make sure that the standard at 1 inch matches the 1 inch, which is interesting that you only check it at the one end and the other and nowhere in the middle. But looking at that, I know I need 1.90. Now I could set this up as a go, no-go gauge, and I could set this for 190, lock it in, and hope that it doesn't slide on. Well, it did though. So that tells me that I am below the minimums. I'm getting 1.84, 1.78, 1.76. So unfortunately, this brake disc unairworthy, which means that in all likelihood, the brake disc on this side is probably unairworthy, and I need new brake discs before this can go back in service. Here's the liners. It looks like the liners have been changed rather recently. Let me give it a pointer out right here. There we go. And you can see these are the rivets down in there. And you can see all of the meat left between here and the rivet. And there's data in there that I'm going to look up in a little bit. But as a rule of thumb, you just know that it's going to be how much you have between here and that rivet down there. So the pads on this and on the aircraft still, they look fine. They look fine. I don't have a problem with them. But the disc, definitely not fine. I will be buying new discs. Ouch. So let's go back to work. All right, we got the left side off. This is Katie, my daughter. A lot of you know her. I can't do it. I'm spending money here, so she's gonna tell me if I've got to buy brakes for this side too. So remember, it's 0.190 is the number to beat. So it's got to be 190 or better. And am I
181?
So I'm spending more money, huh? Guess what you're getting for Christmas? Brake discs.
Bad.
All right, say it.
Back to work.
So I've got the wheels off both sides. I have Emilio over there. He cleaned up the right side wheel. I've got the wheel halves right here. And before I make my order for my new brake discs, check the linings. Linings are good. Of course, they're the cheap part. But I want to check the bearings and the races. And the way I'm going to check the bearings and races is, I said, Emilio's cleaned them all up over there. And you want to blow them clean, wipe them clean too, get all the cleaning fluid off. And be careful, don't use compressed air and press it on here and roll the bearing. They've been known to explode and actually hurt people. Plus, it's just not good for the bearings unless you want to buy new bearings. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a nice flashlight and I'm going to look at all of the rollers. And at the same time, you have to realize there's an interior race. I want to get in there and try and look at it. But for the most part, if the rollers are good, so is it on the inside too. Now, like you said, you're going to use a flashlight and look at this. You should also use a 10 power magnifying glass to view that. And I've done that. It looks good. And sometimes it's a little difficult to hold a flashlight and a 10 power magnifying glass at the same time. That's why I've always had a pair of jewelry loops. They work really well. It's a lot more than 10 power. It really gets you in there and frees up your eyes to look at what's going on. Now, funny story, one of the first jobs I ever had, I was doing this. I had my 10 power magnifying glass. I'm looking at it, and I remember the shop foreman came by and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm supposed to use a 10 power glass." He said, "Good Lord, man, if you need a 10 power glass to see the problems, they're fine." Well, we know that's not true, but that was a funny story to me. So here's the race. I'm going to look inside the race the same way. Look at it this way. Get in there with the 10 power magnifying glass. This has a very short focal length because this is about, I think it's more than a 10 power. It's like a 20 power. I almost got to lick it to get in there, which I don't really appreciate much. So that one, I would rather get in here and look at it like this. And that race looks good. I see no problems with that one. I've looked at this one. I thought that looked good. This race in here, that looks pretty good. We call that one airworthy. So got airworthy. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grease them up, but I'm going to wait for another time to do that. I'm going to get that done when I get the new brakes in and I start putting everything back together. So I guess it's not back to work. We're done for today till parts come in. So until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.